You're listening to the Sustainable Angler Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Crawford. Really excited to share this episode with y'all. I interview David Fladd, who is the founder of the conservation nonprofit Release Over 20 Inches. And their mission is to influence anglers to follow personal catch and creel limits more restrictive than the law allows by using rewards, positive reinforcement, and facts backed by scientific research. So we take a deep dive into Release Over 20. We talk about some of the threats that speckled trout, flounder, and redfish are actually facing here in the Charleston area. And we also talk about what gives David hope. So really inspiring episode. Make sure that you give Release Over 20 a follow on Instagram, or if you can, support their nonprofit. They're doing a lot of great work all over the country, actually, but they are based right here in Charleston. So anyway, hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for listening. Support for the Sustainable Angler comes from Emerger Strategies. Emerger Strategies is a sustainable business consultancy that was founded in 2016 with the idea of using business as a tool to solve social and environmental problems in an effort to protect the planet and the people we love. Emerger Strategies is also now offering a free sustainability assessment for any business owners who want to take the first step on their sustainability journey. For more information, visit www.emergerstrategies.com. The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is now airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, Ohm Radio 96.3 FM.
All right, sounds good. I'd like to just start and say thanks for having me on. It's an honor. I've heard a few of your episodes, and you've had some real heavy hitters on your show, so I don't know if I feel qualified, but I do appreciate it, and it's an honor to just come on and like spread the message about what we're trying to do with Release Over 20. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, it's psyched to have you on.
Okay, thanks. So I'm actually a damn Yankee. I'm not from here. I'm from Western New York, Rochester area.
Okay.
But I've lived here half my life, so I've been here since '97, so a pretty long time. Didn't really get into saltwater fishing until 2006. Had got into it like I think probably most people who didn't start with like a father or a grandfather or some family member taking them. Pretty much had a friend take me out fall time, I think November, and went trout fishing. And just shrimp under a cork, probably caught 15 trout that day, and really just kind of excited me about fishing. So one bought a boat, started reading everything voraciously that I could find about fishing, and started looking for a fishing club to join. But I'm in Somerville, which is outside of Charleston. Didn't have any clubs nearby. Each one was going to be like a 45-minute drive, so I just didn't act on it. But I would fish every weekend, usually the same creek, Codder Creek, which is like a branch off the Cooper River.
Yep.
And it's a good thing to do for anyone starting out, is just kind of pick one creek and just fish it only, all tides, learn every bit of structure. And that's kind of what I did. I'm an engineer, so I'm really analytical. So the puzzle of trying to figure out the patterns was just super interesting to me. So that's kind of how I got started. And then it's kind of funny how things happen. I heard about a guy named Ralph Phillips was going to start a family-based fishing club in Somerville. So naturally, like I was looking for that. I was really excited. So I went to the interest meeting, and if you don't know Ralph, so he's kind of a local legend among fishermen. He was one of three original charter captains. About the time I was born, he was a charter captain here. It was him, like Zed White and Mike Abel Sr., I think, were the three. So I had been to one of his seminars, I think at Hadrill's Point, so I knew who he was. But he had brought to this interest meeting a who's who of fishing in Charleston. So it was like Andy Pickett, who was the owner of charlestonfishing.com, which was like the big popular forum here. It was Mike Abel Sr. It was Dave Wallace from Scout Boats. It was someone from Charleston Angler. All these people that he knew to be like on the initial board, and they needed someone to do like the website. So I raised my hand. He didn't have any idea who I was, but I'm a tech guy. Like that's my strength. So I raised my hand and I volunteered to be on the board to do the website, and that's how I got to know Ralph. So, we started the club. Still didn't know each other that well. He invited me fishing one day. It sort of turned into a friendship that I think, like I mentioned, me being just really analytical and wanting to learn because I was just super interested in fishing. When he spoke, I listened and I really applied what he was telling me to try to get better. And what he always tells me is that people always ask me for advice, but they don't listen. And I would listen. Like I listened to everything he said, and everything from like reading the water to technique to trying to understand patterns. I was just a sponge. So I think that's kind of how we hit it off and started to fish more and more together. And that led to the idea. You got to remember, this is like 2011 to 2012. YouTube was there, but it wasn't really like it is now, where there's so much fishing out there,
Right.
like instruction. It just wasn't there. So we were like, why don't we start a business, and like I'll like be a videographer and we'll teach people how you taught me. We'll record it and we'll put it on YouTube, and it's like the underpanned South Park episode, right? It's like, then profit. Didn't really have much of a plan, but we started doing that. I bought some equipment and I was terrible at it, to be honest, but I have all this footage of fishing trips, and I was paying attention to what was happening in the industry. And it was just all of these fishing channels were popping up everywhere. And I was like, this is a ridiculous business idea. We'll never make a penny doing this. It's already out there for free. Why would we be any different? So we were just trying to, figure out what we were going to do. And he had said in passing, like he always fished this kind of a jig head called a coatee jig, which is like a red painted head with a painted eye, big painted eye.
Uh-huh.
And he used to be an offshore fisherman. And a lot of the big offshore trolling plugs have these giant eyes on them. And he was always convinced that made a difference. So he had said in passing, like, I fish this jig only because it's got the biggest eye I could find on the market. But I really liked one with even a bigger eye because I think it'd be even better. And that's where the whole idea of what is now eye strike fishing came from. Again, me being an engineer, I was like, well, I think I can make one. Like I can design, I'll figure out how to design one, figure out how to get a mold made, and then we'll try it. Like, why not? So let's like pivot the business and maybe we'll make jig heads. So it took probably 6 to 9 months, finally got a design and got an initial mold, like a 6 cavity mold made, hand poured, and started making what's today the trout eye 3/16 jig head. And it worked really well.
Yeah.
For us personally, we really made it for ourselves mostly. We were just pouring them by hand. And it turns out we're friends with Daniel Nussbaum, who's now the president of Z-Man. We
Yep.
gave him some to try, and he loved it. And he was like, let's open our books if you don't mind. I'll open my books. You open your books. We'll figure out if we can make this work so we can carry it as our product. If you're interested. And we were like, oh my God, yeah, because they're a giant, they're one of the world's biggest lure companies. So we really literally went from doing like supplying Hadrill's Point here locally, doing like $500 in sales every 2 weeks or something, to overnight being a worldwide product.
Wow, that's awesome.
Which is amazing. Like it's still, we count our blessings every day, because it's like it's a pretty incredible to be partnered with a company like Z-Man, and that's grown into I don't know, we have probably 8 different product categories now and 150 SKUs, just different hook sizes, different jig types, this or that. So anyway, that's kind of the history of how I got in the industry in the first place. But the origins of Release Over 20 is that, of course, again, Ralph being my mentor, he's known as like a trout guru, like all about speckled trout fishing. And naturally that rubbed off on me. And it's all about artificial lure fishing and trying to catch a big trout. And I didn't really realize it then, but now I have a very, I guess, probably more than most people, I have a very good understanding of what trout are around the country. And we just have a very bad trout fishery here for size and quality. And I don't really know why that is. I have my theories, and I think DNR has some theories. But anyway, I was hoping to catch more big trout. I just feel like that we didn't have many. So I was asking some people who are involved with like high up in CCA, and like, how do we make laws? Like, could we ever get an upper slot for trout? And I didn't know how laws are made here in South Carolina. And I was told there's no way, it'll never happen. And I was like, why not? Well, we're one of, I think, 2 states in the country whose state legislature makes our laws, not like a committee, not our DNR. It's a lawyer or a legislature, a senator or in our state government who, some of them are knowledgeable about fisheries, but some are not. And a lot of them are not. So it's very political. And if you have people in other parts of the state who are vocally against, restrictions that might be better for the fishery than it is for the fishermen, it's probably never going to pass. You know how, it's politics basically. So I got frustrated. I was like, man, that sucks. Like, what can I do? So I was thinking about it, and I always tell people this because in hindsight, it sounds stupid, but at the time, this was a big epiphany for me. And that was, why can't I make my own upper slot and just follow it? Even though it's not the law. The law says I can keep any trout over 14 inches. Why can't I make my own and pick a number? I pick 20 inches. Why can't I just say my upper slot is 20 inches? If I ever catch a trout over 20, it's automatically going back because it's my law. Like this was like, oh my God, this makes perfect sense. Like, I'm going to just start to do that. I'm going to do it now. And so I've been doing that now for like, I don't know the exact date that I started, but it was probably 12 years ago. And I've been doing that myself, and I've told people, like, social media wasn't as big back then. So it was like on forums, I would just say, look at this trout I caught. And then I released it. Like, I released all my trout over 20. And here's why. And then it was interesting because people would stop me at places like, like the Hadrill's Point Expo, and I would never have met them. And they'd say, "Oh yeah, I follow you." And I started doing that too. And I was like, really?
Oh,
That's
that's cool.
amazing. Um, and so it's kind of funny because I was talking about this just like I'm telling you right now on a podcast in North Carolina. And I was like, I'm thinking about maybe trying to start something around this. I don't really know what to call it. And I also don't know if anyone's going to care. But I'm really busy and I just haven't done it. I haven't thought about it seriously yet. And it was interesting because a guy named Joe Neely at the time, he was at CCA North Carolina, was listening. And he got a hold of me and he's like, "Look, man, this is exactly aligned with what we want to promote. You really need to make this a thing. Like, I can help you, like, get it organized, get started. We'll get a logo." And I was like, that's a kick in the butt I needed. So it was like that's a huge acknowledgement of it. People do care, and that it has some legitimacy. Yeah, CCA in North Carolina telling you that's pretty cool.
Right.
So that's kind of where it started. And man, it's been a wild ride. So ever since then, this was early 2020, around the beginning of COVID. And I started doing this nights and weekends after my full-time job is I'm a like an optical metrology engineer. And then also running the fishing business. So this was kind of in my, quote unquote spare time. And what I would do is I set up like a website and a way for people to enter their releases in a database, and then they could request free stickers. And then also, I was like, well, I'll just go and I'll ask different companies if they'd be willing to send me some product that I could put together into some giveaway packages, and then pick a random from all entries for that month, pick a winner, and then get to reward them for practicing conservation. And that's how I started. Just kind of, I was mailing these, hundreds of envelopes myself, getting all the stuff for the giveaways, and really made an Instagram page, and it was growing like 20% a month, up till 6,000 or 7,000 followers in the 6-month period. I think it was amazing. Awesome. And people from Texas to New Jersey, right? Just all over the coastal East Coast, Gulf Coast and East Coast of the country. So I got to a point where it was getting like a very busy. And the other thing, man, I didn't want people to think I was doing this as an avenue to promote iStrike. Like, this is something that I care personally about. If I didn't have the fishing business, I'd still do it. Yeah. I would do it 100% without iStrike. And I was using like iStrike's, assets, printers, email, website hosting. It was all being funded by the fishing business. And I decided I was going to spin it off into a 501c3 nonprofit to keep it completely separate for that reason. And so that's what I did starting in fall of 2021. So yeah, I'm sorry, I've been talking constantly, but I could talk about this all day. So I'm gonna take a break and let you respond.
No, I like it. I mean, that's that's why I love doing this podcast. I love learning and hearing these stories, and I think that's all incredible. And so So Release Over 20 is now a 501c3 nonprofit. But and maybe it's Ralph, and you alluded to it, but I'm a little bit curious because it's like, you're like, hey, I'm doing this for personal reasons. You're obviously passionate about it. Who who are maybe some of your conservation heroes that maybe inspired you to to start something like this and take a leap and yeah, just I'm curious to know who has inspired you in that regard.
That's a great question. So I have several. I want to start, and this person doesn't even know I'm going to call them out, but there's a guy um, who goes by Hoppy Hopkins. He's a local captain in Isle of Palms, and he was pretty active on Charleston fishing, like 15 years ago, and someone that people looked up to. And he had planted the seed about like releasing big trout in some posts that he made in a forum, and I was just a very interested listener to that. And he kind of got me thinking that way to start with, and he probably has no idea about that, and I don't really even know him that well, but that was very early on. But I also had been a follower of a person who's now I consider a friend, Chris Bush, who runs a a business called the Speckled Truth, which is it's primarily all about speckled trout, and it's out of he's in the military, so he's moved to different states. He's currently in Texas, but it's well known among people who fish for trout. Like everyone knows about Chris and Speckled Truth. He has a mantra: take what you need and release the rest.
Yeah.
That was another kind of influence on me. And also, I had taken a trip to Texas to trout fish, and a lot of those big trout anglers in Texas have long been proponents of conservation. And I was with Captain Wayne Davis, who's down in Port Mansfield, southern Laguna Madre, and he and Ernest Cisneros, he's another guy that's like down in the very south part of Texas. They started a program called the Empty Stringers Catch and Release Program, and when we went to fish with Wayne, he told us about it, and he's like, "Look, this is what we ask all of our anglers. It's like if you agree to release everything that we catch today, I'll give you some free stuff. And also, everyone who does it for the year has a chance to win like a $1,500 prize at the end of the year that we'll pick at random." And I was going to do that release anyway, but I was like, that's so cool. Like you get a t-shirt and a mug, and some random stuff from sponsors, and then the chance to win that big prize. That was a huge influence on me because I was like, I think that like I love that concept, and I love to be able to take what it's been my personal philosophy and see if it's like if I can make it more of a national thing, and maybe if we get enough people to get on board with this concept, like we can really make a difference. And I really do believe that. But so I would definitely count Wayne and Ernest as another big influence on me. But I'm pretty much like, I don't know. I think a lot of people are just born that way. I'm just naturally conservation minded. Like for example, Ralph and I were fishing up here in the Ashley River probably 6 years ago. And we're just noticing all this trash in the water. It was everywhere. And I was like, Ralph, we got to do something about this. Like, and we were both involved in the fishing club at the time. And I'm like, well, I'm going to organize something and called it the Ashley River Cleanup. And we did it for like 4 years. At the peak, I think we had 105 people and maybe 27 boats and kayaks, all launching with trash bags. And we ended up over those 4 years removing like 27 tons of trash from the upper Ashley River. And it made a real difference. You can go up there even now and it's nothing like it was. It's like so much cleaner. And it's a good feeling, man. It's like if whenever you do an event like that, you are so triggered by litterers. It drives me crazy to see people litter.
Yeah.
But all you got to do is spend a day cleaning it up to get really pissed off when you see someone just casually throwing a bottle out the window. You know.
Well, I think too, as as anglers, I feel like you sort of, or you hope anyway, and it seems like based on the success of Release Over 20 that you feel, or at least I do, sounds like you do too, a sense of responsibility, right? Because it's like, hey, I'm a user and I benefit from this resource. It brings me joy. It can bring me dinner. It's like I got to take care of this. And as a father, that means a lot, right? Because like,
Mm-hmm.
what are we giving them? What are they inheriting from us? And in Charleston, I mean, well, it's everywhere, right? I mean, there's plastic everywhere, there's trash everywhere, and obviously that's a threat to our fisheries. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think the scariest statistic, I guess, that really resonated with me was that they're like saying that by 2050, like there'll be more plastic by weight than fish in the ocean. And
It's
it's
crazy.
like, that's insane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how is this happening? And so doing the litter sweeps and the cleanups are, and I'm also a believer, by the way, too, of when if you go out and get your hands dirty, like there's nothing that cures sort of that depression of like, God, is this hopeless, than actually getting out and doing something about it.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's to me, it's maybe it's somewhat selfish, but it's like, yeah, I mean, that makes me feel good to do things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so as a sort of a question, I would say, we know that plastic pollution and all styrofoam and everything else we find in the water are threats. But what are some of the threats to speckled trout is one question I have. And I know y'all also do stuff with sheep's head and southern flounder too. But
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the threats they're facing, and also why is 20-inch the number?
Okay, good question. So, um, trout are very susceptible to cold,
Yeah.
and we have, on average, like every 6 years, we have a cold snap and a trout kill. That's just due to natural fluctuations in wintertime. I think with the way the climate's warming up, it seems like it's going to be less in the future than it has been. But 2018 was our last kill. It wasn't that bad, but I think 2010 we had a really severe trout kill. So the good thing about trout is they're prolific spawners. They spawn, a female spawns about every 4 to 5 days throughout the warm weather months. They peak in the spring and the fall and drop off a little bit in the summer, but they are very prolific, so they recover really quickly. And in fact, when we had our last kill in 2018, um, DNR had made like a let them go, let them grow campaign, and it was encouraging people to voluntarily release everything. And in fact, the numbers in the following years really showed that there's evidence that the recreational angler response to that made that recovery like exponentially faster. There
Well,
was a very little blip year to year after 2018, which is amazing, right?
yeah.
Um, so as a result, we actually don't have a problem right now here in Charleston for trout. We have one of the best trout fisheries we've had in recorded history. From the trammel net surveys results, we have a lot of trout right now, which is great, and a lot of big ones too. Um, so that's that's great. But I think it's like, I'd really like to talk more about flounder, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you look at our mission and vision, it has nothing to do with speckled trout or 20 inches. Um, it's more about just making your own laws, like, make like practicing um, limits that are more restrictive than the law allows,
Yep.
and whatever that may be, it's your choice. The thing about this is it's not waiting for a law to change. It's something that each and every one of us can do today. If you really care and want to make a difference and for the better, you can start today.
Yep.
You just put a stricter limits on yourself, whether it's catch or creel. If the limit, your legal limit is 10, make yours 5, make it 2. Just really cut back, because the laws aren't changing fast enough, I don't believe, to respond to the pressure. Especially like in Charleston, we got exploding population. We've got more boats in the water than ever. It's so much easier for people to successfully target fish, and their learning curve is so short because they have all these, YouTube and Salt Strong and these different places that help you be successful, plus electronics. You can pass by a dock with side scan and count the redfish underneath it.
Right.
I mean, they really don't stand much of a chance if you don't use some restraint. So flounder. So what? I guess I feel like I'm going all over the place here, Rick. I'm sorry, but
No, you're good. You're good.
So one of the things that we're trying to do is influence people to practice release over 20, or at least the philosophy of our mission. And one of the main ways we're doing that is by using facts that are gleaned from research that's buried in some research paper that you never may see.
Right.
And we're trying to get that out there so all people know them. It's familiar to them, right? So I want to use myself as an example, because I feel like I'm pretty in tune with biology and fisheries, but in fact, I'm not, it turns out. A few years ago, I had a great fall for flounder. I caught 4 or 5 flounder over 20 inches. I kept them all. I was like, flounder fishery is better than it's ever been. Isn't this great? And then DNR started coming to like our fishing club and other places with a presentation that shows the flounder fishery has been in decline for 30 straight years, and it's close to almost collapse.
Really?
And my experience was like, I've caught more big ones than ever. Well, that if you listen to their presentation and you look at what they're showing, the data, it was like, oh my God, what have I done? I had no idea. And after I saw that, I was like, you know what? I may keep like 1 or 2 flounder this coming year, but I'm going to let them all go. Well, when you look at the research papers, you learn that male flounder only reach a maximum of 14-ish inches. Maybe a few out of 1,000 will reach 15, but our lower limit at the time was 15. So what does that mean? Every single keeper flounder is female. So
Wow.
in my experience, most people, if they catch a keeper flounder, it's going in the cooler because they're delicious.
Yep.
And they're stoked to get a good dinner, and my wife, like, she gets mad if I let a big flounder go, but it's like, you can't blame her. That's what people, they love to eat flounder, right? Well, should we be surprised that we're decimating the population when we're killing all the females?
Yep.
People just didn't know. I didn't know. I had no idea. So you could argue that, you always hear the argument about, well, why are the laws the way they are? Well, again, I come back to, it doesn't really matter. Like, if you know that they're all female, either practice something like a release over 20, like let all of them over whatever your upper slot you choose to be is, whether it's 22, whether it's 18, whatever. But also consider keeping less of any size. Or even if you don't really subscribe to something like an upper slot for yourself, keep half of what you used to. We need to get these fish back into the population and make a recovery, because otherwise, you're going to buy, a flat skiff or a bay boat, and you're going to buy all the equipment. You're going to go out fishing, and a regular day is going to be struggle. And you might catch a couple fish and be excited, but my vision of the future is that you go out on any given day and there's an abundance of fish to catch. You shouldn't be complaining because there's too many fish out there.
Right.
But it's all in the attitude. It's about how you can contribute
and
as an individual.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I mean, personally, I love fishing for speckled trout, flounder, but my favorite is tailing redfish in the grass. I mean, I just love it on a flood tide. You're sight casting. It's exciting. But I release every redfish I catch. Mm-hmm. It's just as a personal thing. And if I'm going to keep a speckled trout, I don't take anything that I'm not going to plan on eating that night. It's like, okay, we got something to eat for dinner tonight. Cool. We don't need to fill the entire cooler up and then let them get freezer burn in the freezer and waste the life of these fish, So I think that's, when we talk about threats, it's like, Charleston's got this booming population, like you said. We've got more boats on the water, more people fishing, more access to information, which is, great to get people into fishing. But I think the idea is that, or at least for me anyway, it's like, I think it's great to have more anglers if you can turn them into conservationists.
Exactly.
So it's like the more conservationists, the better, right? Because then it's like, all right, then you've got an army of people who are, subscribing to the same ideas or philosophies like release over 20 and putting the fish back and basically respecting the resource. And I think that's something that, at least hopefully with, this interview that we can maybe educate some folks on and get them behind this. Cause I just think that there's like a quote from this writer, Tom McGuane. It's like, we've reached it's something like we've reached the time in the life of the planet where every angler has to basically be I can't remember it. Basically a conservationist, right? Mm-hmm, you got to be a steward, because if you're not, then it's going to go away. I mean, it can collapse if you just give it a chance to breathe and let it do what it knows how to do. It can rebound, but not at the current rate. I don't think that we're going.
Completely agree. And I'm sorry. I didn't mean
no. Go ahead.
So I love to talk about redfish a little bit. So have you seen the Trammel Net surveys over the last 30 years for redfish that DNR's put together?
I'm sorry. By the way, for everyone listening, it's like 75 and sunny in Charleston. I've got my window open and a recycling truck just drove by, so I didn't hear you. What?
Oh, it's a beautiful day. Yeah. So our red fishery is actually in decline as well, pretty badly. And you might wonder what's going on, because we have an upper slot for redfish. And that's one of the reasons we don't currently recognize redfish releases, because they're really well regulated around the country, most places. Not to say that we won't include them in the future. We just have to figure out what's the best way to do so. But I've been a tagger, volunteer tagger for DNR for 9 or 10 years now. I think I've got over 2,000 fish tagged. That's awesome. And that's one thing that you really understand about redfish when you tag fish. And that is, you can you can tag a redfish under a particular piece of structure. And then that same fish will be caught on the same exact place at the same time of year, the next year, the next 2 years. They come back to the same place. So when you're analytical person like me, you think about, okay, what does that mean? Okay, well, let's say you have a dock, like picture a dock in the Wando River, which is, there's many of them there that at a certain time and a certain tide in the summertime, you can just catch a lot of redfish under it. Like they must be stacked under some dock. But let's say a boat shows up there in the morning and they keep their limit of redfish, and then they pull out and the next boat comes in and they keep their limit of redfish. How many days will it take until that dock is completely cleared out of fish?
Right.
Not long, and they're never coming back. Well, if you let them go, they'll be back there next year and a year after that until they get big enough to move offshore. So especially in a place like the Wando that has so much pressure, you have to ask yourself, when you catch any given redfish, what's the likelihood that's been caught and released before? I'll bet it's pretty high, because I've had fish caught 3, 4, 5 times that I've tagged, and often in the same structure. So it's so important to release these fish. But if you go back to, like, why are they in decline? Well, one thing is that with all these extra people on the water, they're doing just that. Like they're keeping, maybe not even keeping their limit. Maybe they're keeping a few, but it's like the cumulative effect adds up quickly.
Yeah.
And also there's a little bit of release mortality that can happen as well, especially in the summer. But the main thing, like I've been talking to Matt Perkinson at DNR off and on about this, but if you think about it, our bull red fishery is really strong here, and we've got hundreds of guides that target them day in and day out, the jetties, the grillage, under the Ravenel Bridge, and all these hot spots for them. And why are they there from August till October? They're there to spawn. So these fish are getting targeted like right when it's most important for them to spawn. Mm-hmm. So if you're, you and your wife are, getting ready to, get to it, and then someone comes in and like scares you, are you going to feel like continuing? Probably not, right? For a while. So, you get a hook in your mouth and pull out of the water and stressed out. And, you got to worry about predation by sharks and other things too. I mean, it's got to be really disruptive to spawning, but how do you quantify that? I think it's going to be really difficult to do, but it's kind of like common sense if you think about it. I don't know what the solution is, but, a lot of other states are a lot more aggressive in how that they manage that. They might close an area or have like an off, a month off or something like that. I'm not necessarily promoting that, but I'm just saying that it doesn't make it. It's not, I guess it's I have to think about how to say this. It's plausible that we're our own worst enemy in that regard by targeting these bull reds when they're trying to spawn, right? And then that would result in fewer spawned fish in our population, right?
Yeah,
kind of makes sense.
Well, there's a couple of things too that you said, like when we first started the conversation, you're like, I picked a creek and like learned it up and down, and mm-hmm. I live in West Ashley, and at the end of my street, I can launch my kayak, and I still fish it. That's like the spot that I go for flood tide redfish. But like I exclusively fished like this particular area, like kind of near my house, for a couple of years, like just to learn everything I could about it, like in my backyard. And redfish were there, and now they're not. Like they used to be. There's several flats that used to be there, and they're not. And to your point, I think that's the reason that happens is because exactly what you just said. They school up, they kind of hang in the same locations, and people find out, oh, there's a school here, and you get enough people doing that, and whether they're taking one or two or the limit, whatever, but that's how you wipe out a school of redfish. And then it takes a while for it to rebound. And then so now it's been enough years where I think maybe there's some new schools that are like moving in, but it's taken a long time. Like it's not sustainable. I mean, in the end, like you can't keep beating these fish up and taking them all and expect them to stick around. Like they just don't stand a chance.
Right.
But there was somewhere I was going with that. Anyway, it escapes me. But I'm curious to know what, like, so you've got all this, and you're analytical, and you've got all this data that anglers have been submitting. I mean, what are some of the I don't know, what are some of the coolest findings that maybe has come out of that data?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, we have this database, and we are, people enter their fish, and on our website, which is releaseover20.org, we have all this data analytics, which probably would come as no surprise, me being an engineer and loving to look at data, right? So the cool thing is this all comes from our database. You enter a fish and hit refresh on the website, and the releases ticks up by one. So even during this time we've been talking, we probably had 2 or 3 fish entered into the program, and we have all these things like leaderboards, national leaderboards for anglers. Like if you released 8 fish, you might be number 3 in the nation for releases for this month, for example. We also have a state leaderboard. So what state has released the most fish? We also recently started a guide program where we're encouraging guides to be advocates for Release Over 20, because it helps them in their area to improve their fishery. And we're kind of giving incentives for them and their clients to release fish by rewarding them with different things. So we have a national leaderboard for guides as well. And we also have like a page for every state, where we have like a state leaderboard and state guide leaderboard and the top catches in the state overall. So there's like a million ways you can display this data that's interesting. And our most important metric that we consider for ourselves is the number of unique participants. So that's how many unique people have entered even one fish. We have a lot of people who are like serial participants that we've one person that's entered almost 400 fish since we started. And we have a lot of people that have entered just one. But I think we have roughly 200. I can tell you in a second. I had that page pulled up. 2,000 people, unique people. And we're looking to maximize that by just, podcasts like this. I think we currently have 1,720 unique anglers that have entered fish so far. And the average releases per angler is 5.09. So it's just kind of interesting to look at. But one of the cool things to your point, to your question, is I don't think that most people realize how good of a trout fishery is in Virginia. I know I didn't, but they're always, month after month after month, our number one participating state. We've had anglers from Virginia in like the late fall catch and release 40 to 50 trout over 20 inches. in 1 month.
Wow.
It's insane. And they're often catching really big trout, 26, 27 inches in Virginia.
And,
So most people would say, if you ask them where do you catch big trout, they'd say Texas and Florida, probably,
yep.
and not Virginia. But Virginia is kind of a sleeper. And I don't think, because of release over 20, I don't think they're under the radar like they'd like to be anymore.
Right.
uh, it's I look at the current month and they're in the lead like they always are with 33 fish entered so far this month, halfway through the month.
That's super. You know what I thought about too when you were saying about the guide program. What's cool, or maybe I don't know if people are using the data in this way, but like if I was going to hire a guide, like I was going to Virginia for whatever, for whatever reason, and I was going to get a guide for the day, I could look that up and be like, well, number one, I want to support a guide who's conservation minded. And number two, I could look at this and be like, well, this guy obviously knows how to catch fish because he's released or she has released whatever, however many fish this month or this year. Like, so clearly they know where the fish are. So I'm going to support this guide. So I'm going to support a conservation minded guide because they've released that many fish.
Exactly. And that's exactly why we set this up this way, because for just exact that reason, you can go to South Carolina, right? And you'll see on that South Carolina page a guide release leaderboard. And number one right now is Justin Carter from Redfin Charters. He's a friend of mine. He knows how to target and catch big trout like nobody else I know. And he is very conservation minded and releases them all, as do many of the redfin guides. And right there, for no cost to them, is all the guides in South Carolina that support and participate in Release Over 20, their logo, their contact information. I can just go down that list and find Justin, give him a call, and book a charter with them. So that's for the guide. That's a pretty good incentive, right? It directly impacts their business.
That's super cool. I mean, that if you're a guide, you need to get on board with this. I feel like.
And in fact, that's what we call it. Get on board program.
Really?
With the guide. Yep. Yeah. And along those lines, like we created a new giveaway category only for client releases from guides. So when they have a client that might want to keep their big fish, we kind of have like a sort of a outline of a script for them to say, hey, this is totally voluntary, but if you would like to participate, this is something that I support, and it'll make, next, when you come back in years in the future, it'll make a better fishery for you. But if you just agree, this is kind of like the empty stringers thing. It's like, if you agree to release your fish over 20 inches, here's a free decal. Yeah. And we supply them to the guides. So immediately they get that. But they also say, if you are lucky enough to actually release one or more fish, we have a giveaway category just for client releases. So you have a chance to win $150 worth of swag and products, just for agreeing to do it. So it's kind of cool. So it's an incentive for the client as well as the guide.
Well, and I mean, that's a big, I don't know. I love that. I think that just has huge potential, right? Because I mean, it's like people, if you go fish with a guide, a lot of times, that's not necessarily the case always, but a lot of times it might be people who, don't fish a lot and they're trying to either get into it or learn a little bit. And they're looking to the guide for direction, and what's cool and what's not cool. And if they're having a guide, just, it's voluntary program, but just sort of using it as an opportunity to educate them, so that if they end up being, anglers that wind up, becoming nuts like the rest of us, they've got that instilled early on that's, the the best way to take care of the resource, or one of the best ways to take care of the resource.
Exactly. And we also, when they sign up for the guide program, we arm them with some of the basic facts about the species. Like, a 20-inch trout will release 20, it's probably female, and it will release approximately 20 million eggs a season. Much more valuable in the water than in the cooler.
Yeah, for sure.
And then all the keeper flounder are going to be female. And then the one kind of shocker fact about sheep's head is that their growth rate slows dramatically as they age. So they might reach 18 inches by 5 years, but it'll take them another 5 years to reach 20. So, a 20-inch sheep's head's probably 10 years old. So, keep a couple smaller sheep head and let the big ones go.
Yep. Well,
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna. I mean, what are some of the things that are? I mean, to me, this is like super inspiring, and just hearing about this, because I mean, I knew about Release Over 20, and obviously did some research, but I mean, sort of putting this all together. I mean, what are some of the either the success stories or the things that have come out of this that give you hope for the future of not only the fishery here in Charleston, but like you said, I mean, y'all influenced guides and anglers, through the Gulf Coast and all the way up to New Jersey. I mean, what is it that has given you hope for the future of our fisheries?
Oh, this is great. So after starting the nonprofit, we probably spent 9 months just kind of getting organized, and we're just starting to get momentum. Believe it or not, I feel like we're just getting started. But we started adding state reps, people in other states that are huge advocates, want to help volunteer, want to get involved, help spread the message. And as soon we didn't even ask for it, and we had two people come forward almost begging to get involved. And then we mentioned it a couple times briefly, but not publicly. And we've had people come out of the woodwork just wanting to get involved. So we now have state reps in Virginia, Louisiana, Florida, and North Carolina, who are just amazing. Like we get on the phone with them. We're like, okay, if you're interested, let's get on the phone with the board, which is me, Carrie Browning, local person, and Adam Farrer, my two partners right now. And we get on the phone, and just to hear them talk about the impact it's had on them and these are totally opposite corners of the country. It's so inspiring because we'll get sort of, bogged down with the day to day, and you sort of forget a little bit sometimes about what the impact is. And then you'll hear these guys say, I was keeping everything I caught. And then I heard about Release Over 20, and I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. I'm going to start today. And it's like, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Just, and I just, like I said, I feel like, especially we're with these state reps, we're just starting to get traction, and it's hard to say like what the end game is. I think if you can get to where, honestly, I think a lot of your followers are probably fly anglers. Most fly anglers are really conservation minded, mostly releasing everything they catch. If we can just get saltwater anglers in the mindset of being a lot closer to that, just having a conservation mindset instead of a show off by having a deck full of dead fish, like how quick can you catch your limit and kill your limit? Just changing the mindset to releasing fish and just protecting the resource, like you said. I really believe we can have a huge impact across the whole country in just abundance of fish. Like you want your kids and your grandkids to have an amazing fishery that, we all know how much joy it brings us to be out in nature and see the sunrise, catch a fish, you treat it like as valuable as it is, and let it go to be caught again. It adds so much to your lifestyle to be able to enjoy that and to have the possibility of future A being one of um, poorly managed, overfished, like fish all day, hardly get a bite as being the norm, to option B, going out and just having an abundance of fish, seeing, if you may have seen this, you come up on, you look over the Spartina into a little pool on a flat and you see 15 tails.
Yeah.
You don't even want to cast at them. You just want to watch. Wouldn't it, like, my vision is like, let's shoot for abundance. Let's have our future be one where there's just these incredible things to experience. And the thing is, we can make it happen. It's in our own control. We can just voluntarily do the right thing. That's what gives me hope.
Well, I absolutely love that, David. I'm super psyched about getting a chance to finally meet you. I think we were kind of like pinging each other on Instagram for a while, or I was pinging you is probably the better way to say it. But I'm glad we finally got time to talk about this. Where because I love what y'all are doing. This is super cool. Where can people find more info or find a guide if they want to book a guide who's releasing a lot of fish and all that good stuff?
So releaseover20.org is our website. We also we're primarily on Instagram at releaseover20. We also have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page and group. So any of those places, you can find us. And if you don't mind, I want to plug our fundraiser event coming up. So
yeah, for sure.
We have this is the second year of our event. We call it Cast It Forward. And this is a event that's hosted by the Post and Courier. And it's at Firefly Distillery on April 29th, Saturday, April 29th, 11 to 5. And this is an outdoor, awesome venue with music. We're going to have Tia Clark from Casual Crabbing with Tia is going to be our featured speaker. She's got an amazing inspirational story. And C.A. Richardson from Flats Class TV is a high-profile national level TV host, among a whole list of kids' activities and seminars about different kinds of fishing, sheepshead fishing, trout fishing from people around the country. Last year, we had over 500 people. It was a huge success. This year, I think it's going to be a lot bigger and a lot better. And we'll have like an auction. We're raffling off a almost $3,000 kayak. And this is how we raise our money. We're all volunteers, so all the money that we bring in is going right back to the participants. So we hope that you can come. If you got anyone that's listening, we'd love to have you come. Tickets are on sale right now on Post and Courier, and they're discounted for until after this weekend, I think. So early bird ticket sales, but we're excited. It's going to be April 29th. Looking forward to it, and we're working on the details as we speak.
That's awesome. Well, I will definitely be in attendance and bringing awesome. my 4-year-old daughter, Emma Claire, and I'm going to go get my tickets right now, actually.
Awesome. But we get to meet in person.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll have to try and get a beer before then, but yeah. But yeah. Well, David, thanks so much for everything that you're doing and promoting this. I think it's super cool, and I'm happy to support in any way that I can. And I'm glad I'm able to help promote what y'all are doing through the podcast. And this is just super cool. I love it.
Well, thanks so much, Rick, and thanks for everything you do with your podcast. I love your message, and I think it's great. So it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sustainable Angler Podcast. Special thanks to David Fladd and Release Over 20. Make sure to check them out on Instagram and check out their website and support them if you can. Just wanted to also mention we have past episodes and merchandise and blogs and all sorts of other good stuff over on thesustainableangler.com. So check that out as well. Stay tuned for the next episode. It'll be here next month.